Help me navigate this difficult family situation.
Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers,
We're therapists.
and we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin.
Brannon, how's it going, man?
Good. I was just thinking about all of the weird food we ate when we were kids.
Brandon, what were you thinking of specifically?
Well, I mean, on top of the sardines and oysters and like oyster stew. Remember that?
Oh, yeah. Which is basically milk with a can of oysters dumped into it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, bread and milk. I mean,
That was a family staple.
family staple, bread and milk. And how often did we get the name brand cereal?
When we'd get like an A on our report card, we get to pick out a box of cereal that we wanted. Otherwise, no way, man. Yeah.
You remember the shredded wheat, like the big, huge,
The big one, yeah, the big
ones?
chunks of them, the bricks of
Yeah.
them.
And then do you remember Grandma with her eggnog? It was like Nestle Quick. It was like literally like 5 raw eggs.
She would literally get the blender, just throw a bunch of eggs in, and then throw a couple scoops of like
It was so
Nestle
frothy.
Quick.
It's so good. Yeah.
Maybe that's why you got into that habit of like eating raw eggs for a time.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, shout out to Dad's tomato gravy.
Oh man, yeah, I don't know why.
Do not Google that and don't make it.
I don't know where you got on that topip, man. But
Yeah.
I'm gonna be thinking about that all day.
I was
now.
eating a yogurt and I was thinking like, oh man, I remember Mom went through a phase of actually buying yogurt for breakfast. You know.
Yeah.
Anyways, well, should we get into this, Tyler?
Yeah,
This
you
is an
bet.
Interesting question.
This is a great question. So we actually have had several submissions in the last month. We're going to try to get to some of these a little bit. So we selected one to do today. If you are interested in submitting a question or coming on the show, go to therapybros.com and you can click the button, come on the show or submit a question. We obviously get to the people who sign up to come on sooner, but if you want to submit a written question, this is what we're doing today. So
Tyler, I will add too, like if you sign up, by the time this episode releases, you'll have a little bit of time probably to still sign up to enter into our drawing for the Rising Sun. So you probably got a week or so to sign up. So if you want to be entered in, do it now.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So this is an interesting one, Brannon. It's going to be a kind of sticky family situation here. It says, last October, my son-in-law was caught videotaping my other daughter while nursing her baby without her knowledge. This has completely changed the dynamic of our family. My son-in-law has not sent an apology, and it's been almost 8 months. We've not allowed him to attend family gatherings. My daughter that was victimized does not know if she'll ever be able to forgive again. My other daughter, the offender's wife, has decided to try and make things in the marriage work. They have 2 small children. My husband and I want to respect her decision and support her as much as we can, but knowing how my other daughter feels, I'm not sure we can ever be whole again. My son-in-law and daughter are receiving therapy from several different therapists. I'm seeing someone to help with navigating this issue, but I feel lost and hopeless. How would you advise what needs to happen?
Wow, this is complicated. But I think there are answers to this. It's just kind of where to begin. So there's several victims in this case. It's, obviously the person who got filmed, or it's they're a victim, but his wife, the parents, so the person writing this question, the whole family is affected by it. And so it's such a he might be thinking gosh, it's not that big a deal. It's this, but it's a big thing, and there's a lot of ripple effect to this.
Yeah, just before we get into the specifics of this specific situation, I just thinking general principles. This is so common that I imagine that the son-in-law was probably doing it thinking, whatever, because this is normal for someone who struggles with an addiction. It only affects me. It's not hurting anybody else. This doesn't have an
Yeah,
effect.
Tyler, just to you said it's so common. It's not so common to take a picture of your sister-in-law. What you're saying is it's
No.
common. You're saying this train of thought is common.
I'm saying the denial and the line of thinking is so common. Yeah, like this behavior is not one that we have every single day coming through our office. We've had similar types of things, but I'm not saying the behavior. I'm saying
we understand how he got himself to that position. Like it's crazy. It's a lot of denial.
Yeah,
but
we're reading between the lines that there had to be a lot of mental gymnastics and a lot of self-deception to be able to actually justify doing those kinds of behaviors. And one of those lines of thinking is often, well, nobody else knows and it's only affecting me, if anybody, and it's not that big of a deal, until all of a sudden it became made known. And then what we realize is that there is a massive ripple effect that what we do, whether we think it or true or not, what we do matters in all the lives of the people around us. Mm-hmm. And so this is a situation where now we get a chance to talk about that general thing of look at the ripple effect of relationships, the pressure between sisters and parents. And now there's a marriage that's trying to figure out how to get into recovery, while at the same time there's a whole bunch of other recovery and repair work that has to be done across not just the guy who took the videos, but now there's tension and stress between parents and siblings and children and
sisters and
like and that makes a pretty big messy situation. And so you can see why the person submitting the question here is going, geez, I'm kind of at my wit's end. I don't know what to do to unravel all of this.
Right.
And especially from a mother who probably is highly invested in wanting to have deep, meaningful connections between her and all of her children and their families and all of that stuff. So I imagine there's been a lot of sleepless nights here.
Yeah. And it's so unfair to her. Like, it's just so unfair to the mom here that's writing the question.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things to talk about here, Tyler. Do you want to start anywhere in particular?
I mean, I'm open to, if you've got something on your mind, let's go there.
Yeah, to start with, there's a principle to healing that is just a universal principle of truth, which is the way that you heal is you turn and you face the consequence of what's happened. You have to deal with it. And you can't hide from it. So if you're hiding from it, if you're avoiding it, if you're not doing the hard things and facing it, then it's going to persist. What you resist persists. And for him, the best thing that he can do, let's talk about him for a minute. The best thing that he can do is to actually truly use this as a catalyst to wake himself up, to start to work in actual recovery, regardless of whether his wife stays with him or leaves him over this, regardless of how much the family hates him or is cheering for him to succeed. He works his own individual recovery, and he looks within and says, how did I get to this point? And now I want real recovery. Like, I really desire a shift in my heart to know who I am. All of those things. That's the best thing that he can possibly do. Within that recovery process, it's been 8 months. My guess, Tyler, is that an apology would come, or at least an acknowledgement of, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. And it's uncomfortable. I hate to talk about it. I hate to admit it. I hate to drudge it up, but I'm going to have the strength enough to deal with the issue and face the consequence. Right?
Yes. Yeah. I think you're onto it there. Again, we're starting from his position here. He, for his own sake, would do best to just straight up take ownership for it and call the elephant out in the room and take his medicine, basically.
Yes.
And that would actually free him up to not have to continue to roll around and hide and try to stay under the surface inside of a system that now already knows. You know, you might as well come up, get the breath of fresh air of true accountability, complete honesty, and then start to make the steps based in the truth that are inevitably going to happen, whether that means certain losses of certain relationships, certain boundaries that are established, certain kinds of reconciliation, or letting go of relationships that needs to happen here. But accountability is a massive piece here.
If I'm and for his own individual recovery, independent of doing the right thing for the family, for his own individual recovery, owning that is important. It's just like when we do disclosure processes with couples, and it's like, this isn't necessarily about what we disclose here, it's about owning it. But the other part of it, Tyler, if we shift to sister-in-law for a second, if there's a lack of acknowledgement and a lack of remorse. Now, I don't know this guy's heart. Like, is it a lack of remorse, or is it so much remorse that he can't face it?
Yeah.
And it's, like, who knows? I don't know. But if there's a lack of apology and acknowledgement, then sister-in-law is wise to keep her distance from brother-in-law. Like, she absolutely has the right, and she can get her heart at peace even toward him, but recognize he's not a safe person. And I need my space and I need my distance. And even if he did apologize, she still would have the right to say, give me some time. I need my space.
Have her own, work her own process. Yes.
So just because you're family, it doesn't mean that she has to go to family dinner and sit across from him at a table and think, "Gall, how is he lusting after me? And I feel so yucky and grimy and I don't want to be here." She doesn't have to do that.
Right. Right.
Go ahead.
No, you're good. I think what you're saying there, so there's key principles that we're starting to tease out here. One, and we used him as this example, but I think it applies to everybody, of accountability and honesty. And then two, you're bringing in with using kind of the daughter who is sort of like victimized here, as like, you're saying that she basically is okay to have whatever boundaries she needs to for her safety, and for, like, even if it makes the family feel a little bit differently, or it obviously has changed the interactions of the whole family system. But accountability, honesty, and boundaries are now the three things so far that you've sort of teased into this conversation. And I think that those principles apply across every single party in the system.
Yes.
Right. So the mother asking the question is, she's in an interesting spot because she wants to navigate and keep good relationships with both daughters and maybe even the son-in-law. But chances are that they're not going to have a family dinner anytime soon with all of them in the same room.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And the mother who's asking the question now has to take accountability for how she's going to navigate both relationships with the daughters, still be honest with her own experience and her feelings without making it completely about her. Mm-hmm. And then she's also going to have to figure out what the right level of boundaries are between all of those relationships as well, for herself to be able to go to bed at night on as clear of a conscience as she can.
Yeah. And I think to have an understanding that there's a process of healing that needs to take place. Where mother-in-law is coming to the table. I love both my daughters. I want our family to be together. I wish at Christmas we could just hang out or whatever. But for her to back up a little bit and say, "Okay, I got to shift my expectations here because some things have changed. So how can we navigate this in a way where I'm loving all of my kids, supporting all of them in their truths and where they're at, and not let my agenda get in the way of that process to unfold." Right? That's extremely difficult.
We called it the agenda, but it's like, when you've been living a certain way, it's like the whole book, Who Moved My Cheese? You've been living a certain way and you go to the same place, you get the cheese all the time, and it's just the way things are. And then all of a sudden the cheese gets moved and you go back and then you try to dictate that it needs to be in the same spot, the same way that it used to always be. That increases suffering for everybody. And what I think you're saying, Brannon, is one thing that she can be doing is she can be doing her own grieving process to come to a place of acceptance that things are forever different now.
Yeah.
They are going to be forever different. They're never going back to the way they were.
Right. And that doesn't mean that life is hopeless and it's horrible. It means you're going to learn different things. You're going to have different experiences than what you wanted or what you expected. And maybe your daughters will feel more closer to you and an increase in love because you're such a strong support for each one of them as a result of this horrific thing that happened. Um, and yeah, it's different. Nobody asks for this in their life, and at the same time, I like what you say, Tyler. There's a process of grief for her, for the mother-in-law, to come to an acceptance of where things are at right now. Um, I want to back up, Tyler, to the sister-in-law, the victim of. One thing to think about with her position is she truly is a victim, and that is traumatic, and it's and depending on her past history, if she's had some sexual trauma or anything like that, or whether she hasn't, there's work to be done on her part to deal with that perpetration on her, in terms of resolving that trauma.
Right. So when you say that, Brannon, there's a whole different spectrum of people out there that are going to say, now you and I are going to get into what we call the victim blaming part of the episode.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying at all.
So yeah, so let's just talk about principles from the perspective of when you've been victimized and it's truly someone has victimized you. It's not through no fault of your own, you've been hurt. There's a process that and a set of principles that you can follow that will lead to less suffering over time, to more recovery more quickly over time, and to a more rich, full life over time, even after having been through something that was not your fault. Yeah. So we're not blaming the victim at all in any way, but let's talk a little bit, just really briefly, Brannon, about those principles you're talking about. Like, if she was in a spot of not wanting to continue to stay in that victim place and just be helpless and hopeless and miserable the way that she's inevitably probably feeling right now with all sorts of wide range of emotions going.
Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the steps and principles that would be in play here on that aspect of this situation?
Yeah. Yeah. And just, the whole victim blame thing, like, if someone took a hammer to my leg, and it broke, it's not my fault. They took a hammer to it. But now I got the broken leg, and I'm the one that needs to go get a cast and get treatment and get help. So in no way is it victim blame, but it's a reality that there's some wounding there that needs to be dealt with. And so I think therapy.
How does she heal the wounds? That's the question.
Right. Obviously, therapy. I think processing this with somebody who's outside of the family, who has some expertise on how to navigate something like this. Someone with a specialty of, sexual abuse, victim abuse, can help. They know how to navigate boundaries, relationships, processing the trauma. Obviously, Tyler, you and I always talk about our modalities that we use for trauma. Doing an ART session around this would be probably pretty painful and really, really good.
Yes.
And so I definitely recommend something like that for her. And just get some therapy and process it and understand it. She has a grieving process that she goes through now too, of accepting that reality as well. So
I think being patient and generous with yourself in that process too, knowing that it's going to be likely, if you're like most people, you're going to have a wide range of different kinds of experience, feelings, emotions. You might have one moment of feeling angry and another moment of feeling confused and a moment of feeling sad, another moment of feeling okay, maybe even a sliver of forgiveness once in a while, and then it'll come back and it'll cycle back around. And understanding that that's a part of the process. And I think for the whole family to understand that, as things start to go a certain way, it's not a linear process. It's more of a, let's all learn how to ride the waves of whatever's there as a part of that process, while we all agree that we're all moving towards a place where we want to be in a place of acceptance and understanding and healthy boundaries and a pathway forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, the the thing about feel like I need to say this, like, just trying to avoid this because it's uncomfortable is going to make it worse for everybody. And so it is important, not, you don't have to sit down at the dinner table and be like, let's all just have this out. But I think it is important for the family to know that things are moving forward in some way. And if, let's say, he chooses not to work any recovery, things might move forward with more disconnection from him, right? But I want to shift to the wife, Tyler, for a second. Okay. I've actually had clients struggle with this exact same thing in their marriage, and where their husband has acted out with voyeuristic stuff with family members, by acting out with family members and things like that. And it's a pretty devastating position to be in, obviously.
Yes.
For the wife, for the spouse. Really, really confusing. She's put between a lot of things. They have 2 young kids. Hopefully he's trying to work his recovery process. She's trying to believe in him to heal, to change, to do those things because she doesn't want her whole family to blow up. But at the same time, in many ways, if she does that, then her family of origin blows up.
Yep. She's stuck between a rock and a hard spot.
Yeah. Along with stuck between a rock and a hard spot relationally, but then she's also dealing with
her own betrayal.
Yeah. I mean, talk about a huge betrayal. The grief of that.
Yes.
And so she needs a lot of compassion, and she needs a lot of patience from the people around her. She might make some bad decisions. She might do some things that are like, why I don't get that. But like, she's trying to navigate a situation that nobody should be in.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to understand, for the entire family to understand that.
Yeah. So because the question was submitted from the mother here, it's maybe some of the advice that you're giving, Brannon, is to be sensitive to the fact that, with each of these children, we're talking about the betrayed wife now, to be supportive of her in finding her own journey to making her own decisions. I think a lot of times when these kinds of things happen, the quickest thing that most people go to is a knee-jerk reaction of like, what are you doing? Like, you should be done. Like,
he's a creep, get out.
In a certain sense, he becomes the threat to the whole family system, and to and he becomes the source of the guy who's just hurt my daughter.
Yeah.
Right. And well-intentioned feedback always comes, you should leave him. And that might be the right advice, but the real issue is that we live in a world where every one of us is an agent unto ourselves, and you'd be better off helping your daughter navigate getting her feet planted again and grounded first, because she's swimming right now. She can't think clearly probably right now. Get her feet planted first, start to look at the horizon, and then help her to facilitate making her own decisions, because her own decisions will ultimately be the only thing that she can do to move herself forward. So if she goes and just listens to you and she leaves right now, she'll regret it. She might resent you later on. She might wonder what would have happened. But if she, through her own experience, comes to the conclusion that X, Y, or Z is the right thing for me to do, she gets to own those decisions. And in owning those decisions, she'll learn, she'll grow, and eventually she'll get to the right place for herself.
Yeah. And another thing to consider too is there's pieces to the puzzle that not everybody gets to see or understand, So like she's dealing with knowing his heart and understanding his struggle, and like why is she choosing to stay with him? I don't know. But there's pieces to the puzzle that not everybody sees. And it's so easy, black and white, like, oh, you did that, you're a creep, like, kick him to the curb,
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that's what she was saying in her
No,
question.
no, she's not saying
She
that at
actually
all.
sounds like very kind of wanting to be supportive of everybody. Um, you know,
No, I hear that tone in her question a lot. I think we're just speaking because this is a situation. Situationally, these are the common things that people feel and think and stuff. But the tone of her question, I think, was actually really solid. She's trying to say, hey, where do I start to unravel? Which string do I pull first to try to unravel this mess that I find myself
yeah,
in?
yeah.
Yeah.
Tyler, have you ever done like family sessions where a lot of people come, like, 4 or 5 people come in and sit down?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's fairly uncommon because it's hard to get everybody engaged enough to do it. But this would be one of those situations that wouldn't be a bad idea. Just to say,
I would definitely recommend it.
yeah, just to
Um,
just and you're probably not going to solve anything in that first session or two, but what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that all of the energy that's going unspoken will start to kind of be brought together and say, okay, so and so is experiencing this and this and this, and so and so is, and everyone's, you can't avoid it, you can't shove it under the rug anymore. It's like, okay, now we're more in reality, we can start to make our steps forward.
yeah, and I think as a therapist, I would be assessing, is it appropriate? Is it right? Is it good to have sister-in-law and brother-in-law in the same room together? Are they at a place where they're ready to do that? Can we sit down? If we can all have the therapist needs to be strong in a situation
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
They need to be able to lead the discussion, give some tools, help the family understand certain principles about navigating this. Um, and if they all sit there together and hear it and make commitments together, it's so much better than everybody having their own opinions and thoughts and things all going around. And that's why I think bringing the family together would be actually important.
yeah. I agree with you. I think in this case it would be a hard thing to do, but it would be like ripping the band-aid off in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. I wonder about dad, about his involvement and how he's navigating it. I think he plays an important role too. Being a man, understanding son-in-law, just like how is he, but also like it's his daughter, it's his daughters that this guy has
yeah,
hurt, so for dad to be able to be okay being pissed about it, if he is, but also like showing up with some curiosity and compassion, but protecting his daughters at all costs, like that, navigating that in a way it could be really important as well.
that could end up being an extremely therapeutic thing that could happen too.
Yeah.
I've actually seen it happen. It's a delicate place for either parent, but like a father to be in a situation like this where likely the father has a perspective that's different than any of the other women in the group that could actually be something that could empathize with the son-in-law at the
Hmm.
same time that the father has to figure out how to navigate his own feelings and boundaries
And
and
protect his daughters.
yeah, and figure out how to protect his daughters. But if he learns to do both of those things, it can actually be a really important part of the kind of healing process of the family.
Yep.
Um,
That
so
masculinity almost gives a container for the hard work to be done, for the
if it's
healing as
there,
a family to be done. Yeah, if it's there.
if it's offered and if it's
Yeah.
there, yeah, absolutely. I want to, you said something earlier and I want to maybe just agree with you, but speak to it a little bit further too, Brannon, with this, that this thing happened 8 months ago and to date, there hasn't been any accountability or apology.
Hmm.
And I just, in my own head, maybe you can straighten me out on this one, but I don't know that you can actually be in solid recovery without having first taken accountability. Now, maybe he's working the steps and he hasn't quite gotten to those later steps where you take accountability and you go and seek and make amends and things like that. But there should have at least been some level of acknowledgement and apology in order for there to be real recovery happening.
Well, it
Right?
it makes me wonder some of the ins and outs of it, like how was he caught, and what were the circumstances, and like, and the reason I'm not saying that there shouldn't be an apology. If it happened, it happened. There should be an apology. But what I am saying is like maybe he thinks that he got away with it. Um, you know,
Yeah.
or I don't know what's happened exactly. Um, but in the end, you're absolutely right. Like, if he's going to move forward, he's going to have to deal with it. Sometimes, too, he might be dying to give an apology,
Yeah, he might
but
be.
sister-in-law, and sometimes with victims, like, it's like, hey, leave them alone. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
don't go. So he's like dying to give one, but he
He's trying to
can't
respect the boundary.
respect the boundary. And his wife is like, hey,
Mhm.
she has a boundary. Like, so we don't know what we don't know, but the principle is, yes, own your mistakes, as awkward and as difficult as they may be. Deal with the consequences, so that you can move forward. And if there's any bit of like, I'm so embarrassed, so I can't do that, or denial about minimizing, like, oh, well, I didn't really do that big of a
It wasn't
thing. It
that big
wasn't
of a
that,
deal.
any bit of that, that's going to get in the way. And it's the reverberation of that is going to cause huge problems in the family, versus just facing it, dealing with it. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, that's right, Brandon. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because I want I want for this guy to hear a call to action if he's sitting on the sideline. I also want the wife to hear that if she's trying to figure out to stay with him or not, if you're not feeling the energy of accountability and humility and hard work and willingness to go take responsibility for things,
He's going to
those
do
things,
this again.
yeah, those things are important to feel that those are being worked on, you know,
He'll do
and
something like this. Yeah.
yeah, and then that idea, Brandon, of the reverberation of that energy going through the rest of the family system will also be there.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to bring that up to have everyone in the room hopefully feeling. I'm hoping that what they're feeling is that this guy's really genuinely sorry. He's feeling like he wants to respect distance, but he really would love to go and actually take accountability. And now he's dove into like understanding himself, and he's really going to work on it. I hope that's the case.
Yeah,
Um,
if Tyler, if that dude were here talking to us right now, and if he were like justifying it and talking about his crazy, stupid mother-in-law and blah blah blah, like, what would you say to him?
yeah, basically, we'd be trying to line him out to be a whole different
Yeah.
conversation, right?
Versus if he came, he was crying, just remorseful. Can't believe my addiction has got me to this point. I don't know what to do. I want to change. That's a whole other conversation.
Totally different energy, right? And that's what I'm saying is like I'm hoping that that whole system can kind of be genuinely curious with that level of energy, you know, which
Hmm.
means maybe suspending some judgments to try to feel and read between those lines as well.
Right, right. And my guess is mother-in-law with her intuition could probably kind of feel, um, where his heart is, and she doesn't say what she thinks or how she feels, but she does say there's been no apology.
Yeah.
So, um,
Yeah. I hear her just aching for a family to be reconnected again.
God, it's so freaking unfair, like
Yeah.
it, and really, I do have compassion for him too. Um, you know, boneheaded move, stupid. Why do something like that ever? But he made mistake. He made a mistake.
Yeah. It's a
It's
call to
not
action.
call
This
to
is a call to
action. It's an
action.
opportunity. You know,
Yeah.
um, I actually, you look at a complex situation like this, and Tyler, I know, healing is possible no matter what. Hope is never lost. You can always move forward. You can always learn from every crazy, weird situation that we're put in life. Is everything's a call to action, and if you can have that attitude toward it, that growth mindset attitude towards stuff like this, you can navigate it. You can learn. You can grow, and you can see how God is really fighting for you, not against you.
Yeah. Well, Brent, I know we're about out of time. I know we're just probably scratching the surface on this. Hopefully, there's some benefit to the person who submitted the question. And for those of you who have similar kinds of situations, at a bare minimum, I hope that, right with what we started with, that you can see that your actions do make a difference in the lives of other people, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, for good and for bad. And so thank you guys for being with us here today.
Until next time, Tyler. Keep on keeping on.